The past isn't some faint memory that disappears because someone wills it away. It lingers, it breathes, and it waits. That's where the narcissist stumbles into a prison of their own making. The narcissist tries to bury their history, to scrub it clean, to convince the world, and even themselves, that it never happened. Yet the truth doesn't bend under manipulation. What was done remains done. No story, no denial, no mask can erase it. The narcissist becomes a storyteller of their own legend. They weave tales to protect their image of greatness, innocence, and entitlement. They reshape the script, painting themselves as a wounded soul in an unkind world or the misunderstood visionary. But this endless rewriting of history cost them dearly. Every denial requires a deeper burial of the truth, and what is buried isn't gone. It festers. Suppression isn't freedom. Suppression is chains. The human mind carries hidden chambers, and though the narcissist may loudly declare they were justified, that the other deserved it, or that harm never took place, somewhere deep within, a quiet voice refuses to be silenced. That voice remembers. It remembers the betrayal, the cruelty, the guilt. It doesn't surface with confession, but it leaks out in anxiety, fractured bonds, and a restless soul that can't sit still in the dark. We live in an age where guilt is treated like an optional garment, where responsibility is something people think they can trade away. But that's a lie. The consequences of our choices don't vanish. They echo across time. And for the narcissist, those echoes strike the very core of what they crave most: control. Control over the story. Control over how others see them. Control over their mask. Yet when truth threatens that control, the foundation beneath them begins to quake. Your memory becomes a mirror they dread, not because you hold bitterness, but because your very existence shatters their illusions. You carry the whole story, and deep down they know they crossed a line. They know trust was betrayed. They know love was trampled under arrogance. That knowledge corrodes them from within, not because it's admitted, but because it can't be undone. It's tempting to think the narcissist just moves on, unscathed, leaving wreckage behind without weight. But that's not how the soul works. You can't harm another without branding your own spirit. The narcissist drags away to their actions like a shadow that never lifts. The more they deny it, the heavier it becomes. And here's why this matters. Survivors often carry the fear that the narcissist escaped justice. But a deeper justice is already at work. Not the justice of courts, not the justice of headlines, but the justice written into the human condition itself. The narcissist doesn't walk free. They carry the verdict inside, in the lonely hours, in the collapse of their relationships, in the erosion of self-respect. That's why your power is different. It doesn't come from shouting the truth louder. It comes from standing in it quietly, from living as someone who knows. Because truth doesn't need defense. It only needs endurance. And endurance is what outlasts the most elaborate lies. Silence then becomes your weapon. Not silence of defeat, but silence of intention. Silence that refuses to fuel the drama. Silence that cuts off the supply of reaction they feed on. To the narcissist, your silence isn't emptiness. It's exile. It's the closing of the stage where their manipulation once performed. Narcissists thrive on cycles, conflict, reconciliation, control. Whether through guilt, flattery, or subtle jabs, the aim is always the same. To keep you reacting, to keep you entangled in their script. But when you withdraw your reaction, you step out of the game. And nothing terrifies a narcissist more than losing the audience that gave their illusion life. Silence has a strange kind of thunder to it. When you step back, not just with your body, but with your spirit, you break the rhythm they've lived on. You shut down the feedback loop that kept them puffed up, and suddenly the narcissist is left with the one voice they've always tried to drown out, their own. That moment terrifies them, because a narcissist isn't built for honest self-reflection. Their whole world is engineered to escape it. That's why the lies. That's why the gaslighting. That's why the endless projection. And when you pull away, when you detach with peace instead of rage, you do more than leave. You remove the stage. You strip away the lights, the script, the audience. What's left is a narcissist alone with the wreckage of choices they can't undo. They're forced to stand in the silence they can't control, and that silence becomes the loudest sound they've ever heard. This is why rejection shakes them to the core. It's not just that they feel unwanted. It's that your refusal to play along becomes a tear in their universe. They've always believed they were the center, the gravity pulling every planet into orbit. But your calm refusal says otherwise. Your silence is a mirror they can't edit, and that reflection shouts louder than your words ever could. That's why their behavior spikes when you step out of the cycle. They scramble. They craft false apologies, sudden waves of affection, even fake emergencies, all desperate attempts to reel you back into the old dance. They may swing between begging and blaming, or play indifferent while smearing your name. It's all bait. It's all performance. But when you stay silent, the mask slips, the illusion buckles, the power collapses, and that's where silence transforms into something sacred. It isn't weakness. It isn't surrender. It's a boundary carved in stone. It declares, you don't get to decide my truth anymore. You don't get to touch my peace. The narcissist can't stand that because it denies the very thing they hunger for, dominion over your spirit. But there's something deeper happening here. Silence forces them into reality. Not the fantasy they spin, but the reality they can't escape. A reality where they're no longer admired, no longer feared, no longer relevant. And nothing cuts them deeper than knowing someone who once believed their story now walks away clear-eyed and free. That's the wound that doesn't close. Yet in that same silence, your healing begins. The space once filled with their noise becomes room for your own dignity to rise again. You're no longer chained to their approval, no longer scrambling to prove your worth. You're simply standing, breathing, living, and that is freedom. Silence isn't emptiness. It's a fullness of self-respect. It's the calm that rolls in after a storm, steady and unmovable. And when the narcissist feels that grip loosening, they cling to the one thing they have left, the story. The story where they're always a hero, the martyr, the misunderstood. They polish it, parade it, and push it, sometimes convincing others. But the truth has patience. The truth waits. And eventually, truth pulls the threads until the costume falls apart. That unraveling begins the moment you step out of their script. They cast you as unstable, weak, cruel. Anything to keep themselves untouchable. But when you walk away and quietly rebuild, when you stand strong without collapsing into their caricature, the narrative collapses. You become living proof that their story was never real. And that breaks them, because their sense of self isn't elastic. It can't bend. It's brittle. While healthy souls adapt, admit, and grow, the narcissist can only swing between two extremes, perfection or persecution. There's no middle ground. So when the story shatters, they don't change, they panic. They lash out. They rage. They hunt for someone else to carry the blame, because facing the truth of their own responsibility feels like death to them. In the unraveling of their illusion, something sacred happens. You step out a role they wrote for you and begin writing your own story. It may not look dramatic at first. It may feel like the quietest of shifts, but that shift is everything. Your silence, your detachment, your steady walk toward healing. They rewrite the entire script, not just for you, but for those watching from the outside. Friends see it. Family notices. And yes, even the narcissist feels it, though they'll never admit it. Your wholeness dismantles their myth. Your peace becomes the loudest contradiction to their confusion. And the beauty of it is this. The truth doesn't need to argue. It just stands. This is bigger than your personal battle. This is about the very nature of lies and truth. Lies may glimmer for a season. They may wear the costume of power, draped in charm and emotional heat. But lies decay. They rot like fruit left too long in the sun. Truth, by contrast, doesn't need shine. It doesn't need defense. Truth endures. And those who live by become rooted, unshakable, alive with a deeper strength. You don't need to chase the narcissist version of events. You don't need to correct every rumor, dismantle every accusation, or exhaust yourself in debates. What you need is to live, authentically, calmly, with quiet power. Because nothing unsettles a false story more than a life that proves it wrong. That's how this journey closes. Not with a dramatic confrontation, not with vengeance, but with peace. A peace anchored in clarity. A peace that says, I know what happened. I've grown. I refuse to carry what was never mine to carry. And then comes a turn. When the narcissist realizes their grip is gone, they don't fade quietly. No, they sink into bitterness, sliding into sarcasm, backhanded compliments, or smug indifference. At first, it looks small, almost harmless. But beneath the surface, it's a cracking of an ego starved of fuel. Their passive aggression is not just annoyance. It's the sound of a collapsing self that's lost access to what once kept it alive. You see, when you withdraw fully, not just in body, but in heart and mind, you deny the very oxygen they've always breathed. Your attention, your validation, your surrender. And without it, they suffocate. To a narcissist, being ignored isn't neutral. It feels like death. That's why they reach for passive aggression. It becomes the last tool in their arsenal. They may smirk as if you don't matter. But listen closely. The sarcasm is bitter. The little jokes are poisoned. They'll talk about you indirectly, framing you as ungrateful, unstable, unworthy. Each jab is designed to shrink you, to reclaim superiority, to scrape together the dominance they've lost. But the truth is, those words are just projections of what they can't bear to face. Because deep down, they know what your silence means. It means you weren't destroyed. It means you saw through the illusion. It means you left not from weakness, but from strength, to admit that would shatter their carefully guarded image. So instead, they displace the shame, the inadequacy, the fear of abandonment onto you. And yet, their very bitterness is proof. Proof that you were right to leave. Proof that disengaging wasn't just wise. It was inevitable. There's wisdom in refusing to respond. It's not coldness, it's discernment. You realize not every arrow deserves a shield. Not every noise deserves a reply. And when you withhold reaction, something incredible happens. You become untouchable. Not because you're hiding, but because you're free. Free from their script, free from their games, free from the leash of needing their validation. Bitterness, in the end, is a confession. It's the soul of the narcissist crying out, "I lost." It tells you exactly where they are, haunted, restless, unraveling. They can't say it outright, so they mutter it through sarcasm, gossip, and smug detachment. But every word exposes them more, not you. And your task isn't to decode their bitterness or soften their blows. Your task is to transcend it, to rise above the static. Because the moment you stop explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you reclaim your power. Silence becomes more than restraint. It becomes your anthem. I know who I am. I know what happened. I don't need your agreement to validate my truth. So let them stew. Let them toss their little jabs into the wind. Each one will echo louder in their own ears than it ever could in yours. For you, silence has become strength. For them, silence has become judgment.